Hello and welcome to another Caseware webinar. Today's webinar will be covering the process of using copy components. This is an intermediate level webinar. If we just jump up to the next screen there. Just to start off the introductions, my name's James and I'm an education and media technician. I'll be your host today, and presenting today will be Tom Jeffrey. He's also one of our education and media technicians within the EMT team. If you do have a question at any point throughout the webinar, we will be hosting a live Q&A session to answer your questions at the end. But to raise a question, do just use the Q&A button as shown on screen on both desktop and mobile. One other thing is we apologize if we were made aware that a couple of you didn't receive the automated confirmation email. So just apologies on that front. Hopefully you're all in here now. We'll move on to the agenda now, and Tom will read that out for us.
Thanks, James. Thanks very much for joining us, everyone. As James said, we were aware of a slight hiccup with getting the confirmations out to you sooner. So they did go out this morning. So apologies for that. But looking at the agenda here, as you can see, we're just going to go through the copy components tool and show you some common use cases for when and why you would use it. So I'll start with an overview, and then we're going to go through, I've got 3 sample files where I'm going to be showing you 3 of the most common use cases, being copying in a chart of accounts or the structure of a chart of accounts from one file to another. We're going to be looking at how you can replace important documents and how you can bring in new map codes. So we have regular updates that introduce new map codes to the templates and how you can easily bring those into your files. This is not a slide heavy presentation, so don't worry, but we have got just a brief slide here just to give you an overview of what copy components is and what it does. Again, some common uses there for it. Copy components really is for bringing in components into a file, either from another file or from the template. And we're going to be looking at mapping today and TVs and documents. But you can also use it for other components such as groupings, issues, tick marks. As I say, you can pull content from one file into the one that you're working on, or you can push it to another file. You can push it into a new file. So there's lots of different combinations of how you would get content from one place to another. But we're going to be focusing mainly on bringing content into a new file that we've created today, or that I've created today. So I'm just going to pause my screen, or I'm going to change my screen share to a file that I've got open. And this is hopefully James will confirm that I'm sharing the right screen this time. We had a little bit of a thank you.
Copy components limited there.
Improvement on the rehearsal. And we've got copy components limited here. So what we can see is we have a working trial balance, and we've brought in our TB. So we've got our figures in there. And we have this TB structure with all the mapping in there. So we've mapped it previously. So we've got that task out the way. And what we want to do is we want to take this structure, this framework for this trial balance, and put it into another file. We don't want to put the figures into another file, but we've got another engagement that's using the same mapping structure, the same chart of accounts. So rather than having to tailor that again in the new file and go through that process of mapping the TB, we can actually recreate these first 3 columns in another file, ready for us to bring in our figures from our Excel TB in this case. So what I'm going to do is open up my copy, imaginatively named copy into limited file. And actually, I've not brought any data into this. All I've done is created the file and given it an operating name and a year end. So when we go to our TB, we're going to see here that actually what we've got is the Caseware standard chart of accounts, which is lengthy. We don't want to use that. We want to use the TB that we saw in the other file. So what we're going to do is go to File in the top left, and we've got our Copy Components tool here. And that gives you 3 options. So you have copy into the file. So we can copy into this file from, in this case, the other file that we've been working on, or you can copy in from a template, or you can copy in from a file that's somewhere else. You can browse for one as well, which I'll show you in a sec. Or we could say, well, actually, what I want to do is take what's in this file and put it into a new one. We're not going to show you that today, but that's another option. Or we could reverse the process. So we could copy from the file we're in to another one. In this case, we're going to copy into this file here. So choose the top option. Now, you'll initially be greeted with your templates that are installed. We will look at that a bit later on for the other processes. But in this case, we're going to use either recent. So you're going to see all of my demo files that I've been playing around with this morning. Or you can search for the file. Now, just to make sure that I do the right one, I'm just going to pause my screen share and I'm going to browse for the one that I've been working on this morning, which is the Copy Components Limited. So now we can see, I'll resume that. Now we can see that I've selected the relevant file. I'm going to hit next. Now, what it will do initially is it will give you the option to, you'll see you'll have the radio button there for copying all components from that file to this one, which we don't want to do. And then we've got the option here to copy in documents. So with the following components ticked, initially you'll see the documents option there. We're going to ignore that for this exercise. And we're going to go to trial balance. Now, that's going to confirm to you that it's the intention is that it's going to copy everything over. So it will copy the chart of accounts. It will copy any additional any related data. So adjusting entries, other entries, properties, that kind of thing. Now, we don't want to copy over the figures. So when we select next, we have got this screen here, which is for clearing components. So pretty self-explanatory really, but we're going to tick the box here for account balances. So we'll bring everything else in, but we're not bringing in the account balances, and we'll select next. You'll get a confirmation here of what's going to happen and select finish. Now, while we wait for that to bring that in, you might be asking, the eagle-eyed of you might be asking, why didn't we run a maintenance, the tools maintenance routine to clear any unused accounts? Because this is something that we usually talk about when we talk about importing TVs. And ordinarily we would say go to tools, go to maintenance, and select and remove unused accounts. Well, actually, the process that we've just gone through to bring in the chart of accounts from the other file is actually completely replacing the chart of accounts that was already there. So in effect, it's actually doing that as part of that process. So what we can see now is we've now got this shorter chart of accounts with the same account names and the same map numbers that were in the other file. Now, at this point, we would recommend going to tools and repair file. Not that there's anything necessary it needs repairing, but it would be a case of we would say to re-index all the databases in this file. That's just so that we know we're starting with a nice clean database, because we're bringing in data or copying in data from another file, which is using its own database in the background. We want to make sure that the database here is nice and clean, and you're starting with a clean slate. So it's always good practice once you've done that to go to re-index all the databases in this file, select OK. We don't really need to back up here because it's a new file. But if you were working on a file that had your work in it, that you've been working on, that you'd spent time on in other areas, then it's always good practice to take a backup. Of course, providing that's in line with your internal policies on doing so. But we'll select no, because you don't need to on this occasion. And again, it's going to now just tidy everything up. I have actually just made a mistake there. So as you can see, we've brought in the, I've gone into the wrong file, is what I've done. So we're going to go back into copy into, that's the one. So cut that from the recording, James. And what we'll see here is that we've got the, we're in the copy into here. So we're going to run that repair on this one, not the other one, and make sure that we're not going to take a backup. And this time, we are going to now be starting with a clean slate on this new file with the correct chart of accounts with the right mapping. And then we can very quickly appreciate that this is a copy components webinar, not an Excel TV webinar, but we're just going to very quickly bring in a TV so we can show you how it all slots in. I've pre-selected an Excel file to import with my TV, but you can browse for that if it's not got the right one listed there. And it's just going to think about that TV, and it's going to bring up the rows that it wants to import, it's also going to have a little bit of a guess at which ones we don't want to import, so the ones that it's excluded. And it's done that for some rows that don't carry data, but we'll just use these tick boxes to exclude the other ones that include things like text and totals that we don't want to bring in. We'll select next. Now at this stage, we'll assign that column there as an account number. We don't have to bring in the account description because we've already brought in the descriptions from the other file. But what we will do here, I will bring in the account descriptions because what will happen is it will highlight any discrepancies between the descriptions that are in this TB and the descriptions that are in the chart of accounts we've just brought in, and suggest any amendments, which we'll see in a minute. And then we'll very quickly just go through and bring in our balances. Just select period 1 on those, and that will kind of lock those in so that you can't accidentally overtype them. You can go through if you wish and select next and go into the advanced specifications, or you can just go straight to finish. What we'll see now is it will say, oh, hang on a minute, your sales type A, type B, type C that we have in the chart of accounts we've brought in, well, in your Excel TB, you've actually called them something else, although it's the same account code. So we're going to make that change. That's what Caseware is saying there. You can select next, and that will give you the option to save that layout, that importing layout for use in another file, which we won't do today, and then select import. And that it's not a very large TB, so it shouldn't take too long, although I have got 3 files open at once. This is going to then give you a summary of what's happened, and then we can see that the figures are in there, and then we're ready to start working on the file. Now this leads neatly onto the next bit, which is that I want to show you how you can bring in a new essential document that perhaps you may have accidentally deleted. So we're going to use the wizard as an example here. This is a case view document. So we go to our documents and we're going to say, okay, this is a new file. We'll go into wizard, and this is going to build it in for the first time because all we've done so far is brought the figures in. It's just loading up on my other screen. When it allows me, I'll bring it over to this middle screen that I'm sharing. And now this is a principle that you can apply to many case view documents with slightly varying results. But we're going to show you the wizard as the best example, really. And this is something that comes up quite often. So let's say, for example, we had, oh, there it is, it's gone over there. So we've got our case view here. This is a brand new wizard. So there's no selections in here. And we're going to select accounts. We're going to just quickly pop in some details here for what the client type is and what we're doing. Let's say we're going for FRS 102. We'll go into company details, and James is going to be a company secretary for the day. So we'll save that in there, and I'm going to close the wizard. It's going to ask me to save. Yes, please. Now the core principle here is that the wizard document itself doesn't hold any data. It's really a window into part of the database. So those selections that I've made are in the, so the fact that it's a UK corporate and that we're looking at FRS 102 and that James is the company secretary, that's all saved in the database in the background rather than in the document itself. So if I was to accidentally one day right click that and delete it, of course we need a wizard document if we're preparing a set of accounts, so we need to get one back in. But what we're not going to do is copy in from another file, because copying in from another file, of course, you're running the risk of there being conflicts with different databases, different sets of data, and it's just not going to be. We highly recommend not copying in a wizard from another file. The best thing to do here is go to File, go to Copy Components, and we want to copy into this file. But this time we want to do it from the template. So we'll use Company Accounts Advanced in this case, and select Next. And this is when we are going to use this Documents option at the top that we saw earlier. Now it's remembered during my practices that I've been selecting wizard. So it will usually use your previously selected documents. Now, depending on what template you're working with and what different documents there are, this list might be quite long. So if you want to make 100% sure that you're only selecting the one document, what you can do is deselect all and start from scratch, and then we'll just tick wizard. Select next. We don't need to clear any components because we've only just started using it. And next again, it's going to confirm that that's what we're going to bring in, and we'll select finish. Okay, well, and it's just opened up my other file. There we go. Right, so we're just going to give it a moment to bring that in. There we go. So our new wizard has come in, and what this is a brand new wizard document that's been copied in from the template. So it's as if we haven't opened it before. So we'll open that one up, and it's probably going to do the same, open up on another screen, and I'll drag it over when I can. Now, this is a principle that you can follow while I wait for that to load. This is a principle, as I said, that you can follow for other case view documents. So you could do it for example, the legal and admin document. If you delete that, any selections you've made will be in the database in the background. You can also apply it to the accounts document, or it's worth bearing in mind that it's not going to be really targeting your customizations. So it's more going to be to do with how the accounts document builds from your mapping and from your wizard selections and that kind of thing. So what we can see here, we've got a brand new wizard document. We can go to engagement setup. We can see it's remembered all those selections there, and we can see that James is still the company secretary. So that's just showing you that's a nice easy one for the wizard. So we can get rid of that now. And we've got one other example, common example of what you would use copy components for, and that is for bringing in map numbers for we release TPACs, which are occasionally, which accompany EPAC releases. And the purpose of those is to introduce new map numbers and mapping changes into the mapping structure. Those are not automatically applied to your files. If you're working on a file, if you've got a file in progress, then you would follow the process I'm about to show you to bring those mapping numbers in. Although it will apply to new files, but it won't automatically apply a mapping updates. Simply installing the TPAC won't automatically apply those updates to your in progress files and files that you're rolling forward. So it's worth bearing that in mind. But I'm just going to open up my IFRS file that I have here. Now we've got a TB in here. It's we're sort of mapped and good to go, but we have got an example of an update that we released recently. So this is an old file that I've purposefully not updated. And what I'm going to do is just pause my screen share while I locate the document that I had open earlier, which is just confirming some changes. So what we had is a new a TPAC. Just move that over there. We had a TPAC release which added a couple of new goodwill codes to the IFRS template recently, and this was adding in. Bear with me while I just open up that document because it seems to have left me. I'll tell you what, we'll go rogue. I'll close that and I'll just talk you through it. So if we go to our account and assign mappings, we can see in here under our AO2 03.
Tom, we can't
still
see the
pausing. Thanks,
screen.
James.
Yeah.
Thanks, James. Glad that you're paying attention. So if we go into our AO2 and then we go to the 03, we go into our goodwill section here. Now, we introduced recently in an EPAC or TPAC, we introduced some goodwill codes that were for reclassing, and that was under the AO2, 03, 0013 and 63, which you can see are missing from our mapping here. And those are codes that we added in recently. And if you just want to double check whether those codes exist in there, you can either drill down like I have there, or you can search using wildcards. So we're going to use a common method that we use internally for finding map codes, which is in this case, I know it's under AO2. So AO2, then instead of putting in the second and third levels, we'll put in some question marks for wildcards. So question mark, and then question mark again, and then we'll go for one. Oops, excuse me. We'll go for 1, 3, and then we can see here that we've got a 1.3 code under patents, development expenditure, trademarks, and a few others. We haven't got one for goodwill. So there is a new goodwill reclass to assets held for sale, which is under 1.3. And then equally, we've got our 6.3. So these are codes that we would have told you about in the release notes. So that's how you know we know what to search for. And then we've got, again, amortization reclass to assets held, and that's for sale, which is 6.3. And again, we haven't got one under that AO203 level. So we know those codes are missing. Now, this is a process that you would follow if you haven't updated. So if you've never introduced those map codes to your file, or it may be that you've accidentally deleted a map number. So if you delete a map number, don't panic. You can just bring them in using this method. So I'm going to close my mapping for now. I'm going to go into File and then Copy Components. Again, copy into this file. Make sure we choose the right template. So for this file, it's IFRS, and we'll select Next. And then under these selections here, you'll see we have a Groupings and Mappings option. And again, it's remembered that I selected mapping when I was practicing. So it saves your last preferences, and tick that top box if it isn't already, select Options. And you'll get this little dialog here. So as it suggests, you could replace the source files mapping structure with the source files mapping structure. So we could just bring in a fresh version of the mapping structure that's in the template. In doing that, you will lose things like you may have used a spare code. You may have reconfigured a spare code that's in the mapping to your liking. You may have even created a map code. You will lose those if you replace. So what we want to do is merge. And as it says there, we're going to introduce new map numbers. And so that's going to merge the up-to-date mapping as it is in the template with your file. Now we've got some additional options underneath, which we usually tick when we do this. So for map numbers that are the same in both files. So it's going to compare the map numbers that you have in the engagement already with the ones that are in the latest version of the template. Now, if you tick all of these, it will make any amendments based on the latest state of those codes. So if you've renamed a map code, or if you've changed the extended description, you may have had a play around with groupings, those will be updated to the latest version. So as an example here, we're going to assume that maybe we've changed some names of map codes, we've changed some extended descriptions. So we've selected everything, and you can use the select all and select none on the right if you want to do some bulk selections, but we've deselected name and extended description to retain any customizations. This box at the bottom to autofill account properties, using mapping properties, we would advise that you tick that, and that will mean that when you're interrogating the properties, as you can see up here in the top left, if you were looking at the properties of an account number, then things like flip codes, that sort of thing, will be up to date. So select OK, and then select Next. We don't need to select any clearing components here, so there's nothing relevant there. We can select Next. It's going to confirm what it's going to do, and then Finish. We'll just give it a little bit longer just to think about that, and then we should now be able to go into our sign mappings. It's just about there. Yeah, we're going to our sign mappings. And then we can now drill down and go to the AO203 into Goodwill. And now we can see that 1.3 code and the 6.3 code are there. So you can just follow that process to bring in new map numbers. You may not necessarily be using those, but if you wanted to make sure that your mapping's up to date so that your disclosures are up to date in on the face of the accounts, but also if you accidentally delete the map code, that's the way to bring it back in. So that's actually all of the content I wanted to go through today. So I'm going to hand back to James, and then we'll see if we've got any questions.
Perfect, thank you, Tom. Yeah, just one question I can see that's coming here. It's just in regards to the import that you were doing when you were assigning the column. Kind of like the column names, you selected to include the prior year period one, was it? Sorry, for current year and prior year. But there was also an option for the opening balance under there. Why was that, and what would be the difference between choosing those two?
So you can select opening balance, but we would recommend putting it in as period 1. So let's say, for example, we're looking at the current year, then we wouldn't recommend putting it into opening balance, because you can literally just go in here and overtype it. So you can just do what you want in that column.
You've still got the slides on show there, Tom.
Yeah, bear with me. I'm just going to change to my file and show you what I was just talking about. So hopefully you can see my TB.
Yeah.
So what I was just saying actually is, if you were to bring it in as opening balance, then you can go to that column there and literally just type in whatever you want. So it's really easy to accidentally overtype your figures. Whereas if you bring it in as period 1, it will lock it into the column, and then it's then down to you applying things like journals to affect your figures. So it's just giving you that extra level of or avoiding that risk of accidentally overtyping.
Okay, perfect. We don't have any other questions at the moment, but oh, there we go. Actually, we've got one that's just come in now. When you want to copy the components from accounts, so to copy the format from another set of accounts into the new set, which tick boxes do you have to select? I think this might not be applicable. What do you reckon, Tom?
So let's copy components for accounts, copy the format of another set of accounts. Okay, so let's go through that copy components routine again. So I'm just going to move it back onto my file. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen this time. So when we go into file, copy components, and then copy into this file, let's say, we're still in the IFRS file, aren't we? So if you wanted to have the same, I'm just thinking, because copy components, as we were talking about earlier, we wouldn't recommend copying in an accounts document, for example, from one file into another. In terms of your customizations, if it's to do with layouts, customizations, if you've got custom notes, and let's say you wanted to replicate that in another file, so we'll use notes, custom notes as an example. So if you were using, say, Note Builder to create your own custom notes, the best way to recreate that layout in the other file would be to save out your custom note within Note Builder, and then you can bring that in using Note Builder in the other file. We certainly wouldn't recommend trying to copy in an accounts document from one file to another, because they're relying on the independent database within each file. So if that's to do with customizations, we would say that Note Builder is your friend there. We might drop you an email afterwards just to see if we can get some more information, and we can clarify that. We are going to be including a Q&A document on the help site when we upload the recording. We're also going to be providing a handout with some useful links. But otherwise, we can provide some more detail, but it's probably best that we take that offline after the session, if that's okay.
And the username is down as anonymous, so if whoever's sent that in wants to contact us, that would be
if you are, and we'll get in touch with you afterwards. Thanks very much.
No problem. Wonderful. Yeah, there are all the questions for the time being, but if anyone does have any questions while we go through the wrap up, feel free to stick them on there. I'll keep an eye on it. Wonderful. Yeah, if we just do the wrap up procedure, Tom, if that's all right on the slides. Wonderful. Okay, yeah, just a quick reminder on the caseware.co.uk/events website. Jump on there to see all the upcoming webinars, in addition to any events, in fact, that Caseware is running. I know we've got a couple of other webinars up there at the moment. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but do jump on there to check them out. In addition to that, we also have our Caseware client services page for LinkedIn, where we post about more of the education and media side of things, including reminders for upcoming webinars there as well, so you don't miss out. In addition to that, we have our Caseware Client Services YouTube channel as well. This is where we host all of our quick vids, resources, as well as all the old previous webinars as well. So do feel free to jump on there and check out the playlist offerings. if you say want to find one of the old webinars, for example. Wonderful. If you are having some other issues, do feel free to jump on the help site, help.caseware.co.uk. The help site offers the ability to search your questions using the search bar to provide the relevant articles for you, in addition to having the live chat feature, which puts you through to one of our representatives in our support team. It's not just a robot or anything like that. It's a real human on the other side of things, so it's quite helpful if you're, say, struggling to navigate the site or struggling to find the article that you think you're looking for there. They can help you out. Wonderful. Okay, well, on that note, thank you very much for joining the webinar. We don't have any other questions that have come in just yet, but if you do have any questions afterwards, feel free to contact us and we'll get back to you. Wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much. Bye-bye.